Hi boys and girls, I'm finally back for the last chapters of the Wise Enchanter. I hope that you have enjoyed this book so far. Now we're going for the letter Y. Chapter 25. Yes, they all said, and took their leave of the kind old woman in the blue cloak. When they crept outside again, the cold seemed more vicious than ever. Climbing back down to their boat, they noticed at once that the sea had frozen solid, and that they could walk on it, as though they were on land. "Oh no," said Michael, "we can't sail on this." Using the rope and all their willpower to get it out, the children managed to pull the boat free of the ice and onto the frozen sea. With the four of them tugging on the rope, heads bowed into the bitter wind, they began to walk and pull. The boat glided like a giant sled behind them. They stopped only once and briefly to eat something small. Then they continued on and on. "I'm tired," said Lauren. Beneath their feet, the sea looked more and more like a frozen snowy land. They could still see the rocky islands, but soon even those were swallowed in the fog, and before them stretched an endless, unbroken expanse of white. Snow began to fall from the sky, and it was harder and harder to move. "I don't think we can do this anymore," Rukmini whispered. "We're too late. The sun has vanished entirely." Just then there was a loud growl from the silent fog, or perhaps it was a roar, or maybe it was a rumble. The children cried out. Something heavy was moving toward them. The ice below their feet shook, and even the dormouse peeped out of his bag and sniffed the wind. Something heavy thudded through the snow. Ahead of them, the children could see a great dark form. It thudded closer and closer. All at once, an immense hairy beast appeared in front of them. It had long, shaggy brown fur and big, wide horns, and it snorted great puffs of white air. "It's a buffalo?" said Lauren weakly. "A yak," Michael said. "I've seen one once before in a zoo." "A yak?" Lauren exclaimed, as the creature snorted and looked at them intently. Then a deep voice rumbled toward them. Yes, a yak." "A talking yak? Did you say that, yak?" Michael asked. "Why, yes," said the yak, and slowly, like a reluctant horse, ambled to where they stood. "Oh, dear yak," Lauren pleaded, "we appear to have lost our way. Can you help us?" Yes, said the yak and nodded his head. "Do you happen to know the way to the castle of the Wise Enchanter?" Rukmini asked. "Yes," said the yak. "Are we going in the right direction?" Michael asked. "Yes," said the yak. The children smiled at one another. Through their smiles, their cheeks ached with the cold. "Is the castle very far away?" Sifo asked. "Yes," said the yak. "Can you say anything else besides yes?" asked Michael anxiously. "Why, yes," said the yak. Michael threw up his hands. "It's no use," he cried out. "He says yes to everything. He can only say 3 words, why, yes, and yak. We might be 1,000,000 miles away from the Wise Enchanter." An idea had just come to Lauren, and she walked up to the yak and touched his soft brown nose. "Are you enchanted, yak?" "Yes." He snorted and stamped his feet and paved the ground until the ice flew. "Oh, you poor creature, whatever you are," Lauren said, and rubbed her hands together to make them warm. "Listen to me. If I ask you a question and the answer is no, don't answer me, okay?" "Yes," said the yak. "Do you know the way to the castle of the Wise Enchanter?" "Yes," said the yak. "This might not work," Michael said. "He says yes to anything and everything." "Do you say yes to anything and everything, yak?" Lauren asked. The yak snorted and said nothing. "Yay, that was a no," Lauren cried out. "He does understand us. He can help us. Yak, may I travel on your back and place my hands in your soft, warm fur?" Yes, said the yak. Can we trust you? Asked Rukmini. Why, yes, yes. Lauren climbed up onto the warm back of the big shaggy beast. There was so much room in his back that eventually Rukmini climbed up there too. The yak's fur was as warm as a summer's day, and soon all 4 children and the dormouse were riding on the yak. While he pulled the boat effortlessly behind him through the ice and snow, the children were so used to carrying the underlings that they had almost forgotten about them until one climbed up onto Lauren's shoulder and whispered in her ear, "I'm so very, very itchy." "You're probably too hot," Lauren said. "Poor thing. Come out into the fresh air." So he did for a while. Then another underling appeared, reaching around and trying to scratch his back. "What's the matter?" Lauren exclaimed. "Ooh, it itches, the other underling complained. "My back is itchy." And soon enough it seemed that all the underlings were itching and scratching and climbing up for some fresh air. But the children could not pay too much attention to them, for the ice beneath the yak's heavy steps suddenly gave a groan and a creak. The yak stopped in his tracks. He began to snort and back up, almost falling over the boat that was behind him. "It's okay," Michael called as they leapt down from the yak's back. He quickly untied the boat and the rope and motioned for the yak to turn around. "The ice is melting here," Michael said. "Our footsteps are filling with water." The yak continued to walk backward. The other children slid off his back. "You'd better not come any further, dear yak. We have a boat, but you will sink." "Yes," sighed the yak, and his face looked very sad indeed. "Are we still on our way to the castle?" Rukmini asked. Yes, said the yak, and began retreating further. The ice was now quite soggy. "Climb into the boat," said Lauren, and they all did, pushing it at the same time to where the solid sea seemed to be turning into liquid again. They turned to look back at the yak. He stood there forlornly in the ice and snow, watching the children with his big, sad, dark eyes. "I wish we could take him with us," Lauren sighed. "He's such a dear, and he seemed to know where to go." "Let's draw him before we sail out of sight," Rukmini suggested, "so we can remember him." Michael pushed the magic book in their direction. It was too heavy to lift, so they simply opened it. "Oh, look, Lauren, there are only 2 pages left. We simply can't draw our dear yak." "Why, of course," Lauren shouted, waving vigorously at the yak with tears in her eyes. "Of course we can draw him, don't you see? Look at his horns, look. They're shaped like the letter Y. The Yes Yak is a Y. Bye, dear Yes Yak. Bye-bye, and thank you." Lauren began to draw the yak, and before her eyes he emerged on the page, almost as real as if he were standing there in the book, living and breathing. "Thank you, sir," Michael called as the boat slipped gently away from the packed ice and into the cold open sea. The yak turned, kicked up snow, and galloped away until he was a mere speck of dark in the world of white behind them. Oh, who would have ever thought a yak would give them the letter Y? Maybe because yak starts with Y too. Do you see it in his horns? The letter Y.